Hello there, and welcome to Dream Myths. Tonight, we'll journey to the ancient shores of Ireland. But first, try and make yourself comfortable wherever you might be. Take a moment to find your perfect position where you can fully rest, perhaps letting your head sink softly into a pillow, feeling the gentle support of the earth beneath you. Now, take a deep, slow breath in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth, feeling any stress begin to fade. With each breath, you feel yourself become more and more relaxed, letting your body become heavy and still. Just remember, there's no need to concentrate too deeply. Simply let my voice carry you along as we drift into tonight's tale. This is a tale set in ancient Ireland when magic still filled the air and the fairy folk still walked openly in our world. In the days when Ireland was young and the veil between the worlds hung thin, the Tuatha De Danann still made their homes in the green hills and wild shores of the Emerald Isle. They were the mystical beings of lore, possessing magic that flowed through their very veins. We will explore a world where the boundary between mortal and fae was not a wall, but a shimmering, permeable space. It was a time when the very air held a whisper of forgotten wonders, inviting those with an open heart to step into a realm on the brink of being forgotten by the world of men. In that hidden world, among the Tuatha De Danann, there was none more beautiful or beloved than Clíona, fairy queen of the southern seas. Her dominion lay not on land, but deep beneath the waves of Glandore Harbour in County Cork, a place where the human world and the other world intertwined. There, she held court in a luminous palace, a marvel of architecture fashioned not from stone, but from lustrous pearl and intricate coral, a testament to the ocean's silent art. Clíona herself was a vision of unearthly grace. Her hair, an ever-changing canvas of green and blue, mirrored the shifting moods of the sea, while her eyes held the liquid mystery of tide pools, deepening with emotion. Her most cherished companions were three magical birds, whose plumage shimmered in crimson, white, and blue. The songs they sang were not mere melodies, but pure enchantments. They could mend a broken bone, conjure peaceful dreams for the weary, and with a single note, calm a raging tempest into a gentle swell. The villagers of the coast, though they never saw her, knew of her benevolence. They knew her presence by the sudden, inexplicable calming of waters that had moments before been deadly, and by the bounty of fish that appeared when their nets were empty. For them, she was a benevolent, unseen force, a guardian spirit to whom they left offerings of mead and bread, whispering prayers for safe returns. Yet, for all her power and the splendor of her kingdom, Clíona harbored a profound and aching loneliness. She would often rise to the surface, looking up at the mortal world, and wonder aloud to the moon, what good is immortality if it's spent always apart? This deep-seated yearning for a connection beyond her own kind was a mystery to her fairy courtiers, who saw the fleeting lives of mortals as a tragic and pointless affair. They could not comprehend her fascination with a world that had sought to drive their kind from the green hills. This contrast, this deep chasm between her outward majesty and her inward isolation, was the very source of her yearning. She began to long for a magic she had never known, a magic of fierce love and fleeting moments that she saw in the mortals, a kind of magic that her eternal world seemed to have forgotten. In her solitude, Clíona began to spend more time near the borderlands of her realm, at the place where the seafloor rose to meet the earth. She believed this was where the veil between the realms was thinnest. It was here, at twilight, that magical interlude when light gives way to shadow, that she first heard the melody that would forever alter her destiny. It was music played on a wooden harp, its notes a hauntingly clear and sweet sound, penetrating the silent water to reach her soul. It was a tangible thread, woven of sound, that connected her kingdom to the world above. The Harper was a young fisherman named Kevin, a man accustomed to the harsh demands of the sea. He would sit on a smooth rock overlooking the harbor each evening, his harp in his hands, drawn by the profound sorrow in his playing. Clíona asked her white bird, "Why does he play alone each night?" The bird explained that Kevin played for the spirit of his mother, whom the sea had claimed 3 winters past, believing that she could hear him from another world. This devotion and love from a mortal man touched Clíona's heart in a way her immortal courtiers never could. Here was the bitter irony. Clíona, queen of the ocean, who saved countless sailors from the depths, had been powerless to save Kevin's mother. A strange and poignant connection was forged between them, an immortal queen and a mortal man who mourned a life she had been unable to protect. In Kevin's music, Clíona found a resonance, a shared sorrow, and a longing for connection that was more powerful than her own. One night, Clíona felt a deep and unnatural disturbance on the sea's surface, a fierce quarrel between northern sea spirits, tempestuous beings with little regard for mortal lives, had turned the waters into a roiling cauldron of fury. Despite the building autumn winds, Kievan had taken his small coracle out not for profit, but to gather fish for a sick child who needed strengthening broth. Clíona knew this storm was no natural phenomenon. She sent her bluebird to warn him, but it was too late. The small boat, a mere speck in the towering waves, was tossed between walls of water as high as castle keeps before it splintered against a hidden reef. A feeling of profound powerlessness and agonizing panic seized Clíona, a feeling she had not known in centuries. She rose from the depths with the haunting speed of a hunting seal, reaching Kievan the very moment consciousness left him, his lungs filling with the cold sea and his hands still desperately clutching his harp. She gathered him into her arms and plunged beneath the chaotic storm to her calm realm below. In her palace of pearl, she laid him on a bed of sea silk. His skin was already turning a bluish pallor, and no breath stirred in his chest. Her 3 birds circled above him, their magical songs weaving together into a harmony designed to call life back into failing bodies. Clíona placed her hands on his chest, and with all the power and desperate longing of a queen who had found her other half, she commanded, "Breathe. Return yourself to me, Harper. Your song is not finished." As her magic flowed into him, the seawater was expelled from his lungs and replaced with air held in shining, crystalline bubbles throughout her palace. Color returned to his face, and his chest rose with a desperate gasp. His eyes, when they opened, were a deep, rich brown like fertile earth, so unlike the sea-colored eyes of her people that Clíona stared in wonder. Kievan's first vision was of Clíona bending over him, her hair flowing around them like sea-green silk, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of relief and something more tender. "Am I dead?" he whispered, his voice rough with salt. "Have you come to take me to my mother across the western sea?" Fear might have overcome another man, but Kievan, a descendant of the old ones whose blood still carried a whisper of ancient magic, grew up on stories of the fairy folk. He met her revelation with a quiet awe, not terror. As he lay recuperating, he told her that his people, the fishermen and their families, spoke her name with reverence. They left offerings for her at the changing tides, a testament to her kindness and the countless lives she had saved. A shadow of sorrow passed over Clíona's face. "Not all lives," she responded softly. "Not your mother's." Kievan's acceptance of this bitter truth, that the sea, in all its moods, was a force no single spirit could command, moved Clíona in a way she had not expected. He understood the world's balance, taking its gifts and its hardships with the same steady heart. It was then that Kevin noticed his harp, miraculously unbroken despite the wreck. He offered to play for her, a small repayment for his life, and so began the strangest healing in the history of Cleona's realm. As he played by the open windows of the Pearl Palace, Cleona's 3 birds added their own voices to the music, creating a harmony that was a new language, a sound that rippled through the water for miles, drawing shy Selkies and other curious creatures to listen in silent wonder. When the music faded, they spoke. Kevin told her tales of the surface world of harvest festivals and children's games, while Cleona shared stories of ancient sea kings and forgotten wonders lying on the ocean floor. Their conversations flowed as naturally as the tides, filled with laughter that echoed through the coral passages. Soon, they found themselves seeking each other's presence, even without stories or songs, content simply to be. Their love bloomed not from sudden, fiery passion, but with the gradual, undeniable certainty of a tide following the moon. Kevin found himself thinking less of the sunlit shores and more of the shimmering hulls beneath the waves, while Cleona discovered depths to her heart she had never before explored in centuries of life. This new joy was not lost on her court. While some welcomed the happiness that lit her face, others whispered of concern, recalling ancient tales of fairy mortal loves that ended in sorrow for both worlds. Cleona's court, a realm of timeless beings, noticed the change in their queen. No longer was she the solitary, pensive ruler of the deep. A new, fragile joy had begun to illuminate her face, a light that shone whenever the mortal Harper entered her presence. While some of her subjects welcomed this change, interpreting it as a breath of fresh magic in their ancient world, others began to whisper their concerns behind veiled fingers. They were creatures of memory, and they recalled the old, sorrowful tales of fairy mortal loves, stories that inevitably ended in tragedy for both worlds. It was her most trusted advisor, a wizened, Selkie woman, who finally spoke the words of warning. She reminded Cleona of the fundamental, unalterable chasm between their kind and his. He cannot survive here forever, she cautioned. The magic that allows him to breathe will eventually fade with time. And even if it did not, mortals age. They wither and die, while you remain unchanged. Would you watch him grow old, his life a mere flicker in your unending existence? The truth of these words was a cruel undertow, a cold wave of reality that threatened to pull Cleona's hopes under. Yet, Her heart, now awakened by Kievan's love, refused their sterile wisdom. After much contemplation, she sought him out, her mind made up. I have lived centuries in these waves, she told him, her voice a soft, final note of decision. I could live centuries more, but I find I no longer wish for such an existence. Kievan's fingers stilled on his harp strings, his expression a mixture of wonder and dawning fear. With the clarity born of absolute love, she made her vow. She would give up her immortality, choosing one mortal lifetime with him over endless centuries alone. This declaration, a bold choice of love over life itself, rippled through the underwater court like a storm current. While many were shocked, some openly opposed her decision. Among them, none was more troubled than Ivar, her court musician. For centuries he had loved Clíona in silent agony, expressing his devotion only through the poignant songs he composed in her honor. Watching her fall for a mortal, he had convinced himself it was a passing infatuation. But now, faced with her permanent departure, a desperate, irrational panic overcame him. On the appointed evening of Midsummer's Eve, Clíona prepared for her transformation. She emerged from the sea at the hidden cove, her form already more solid, ready for her mortal life to begin. But as she waited for Kievan, a different sound filled the air. Ivar, concealed among the ancient standing stones, began to play a forbidden melody on his water harp. It was a magic of deep dreaming, a spell that could ensnare even a fairy mind with enough skill and malice. Clíona felt the music wrap around her thoughts like seaweed, a gentle, insidious pull towards unconsciousness. A look of betrayed understanding crossed her face as she slipped to the ground, whispering Ivar's name. He stepped from the shadows, his face a mask of conflicted emotion, and with the aid of other opposing courtiers, began a complex and cruel magic. He would not allow her to become mortal. Instead, he would bind her to the sea itself, a spirit forever caught between two worlds. It was at this very moment that Kievan arrived at the cove, his arms full of wildflowers and summer fruits for the ceremony. He saw only the massive, unnatural wave rising, a wall of water that seemed to hold Cleona's sleeping form within its crystalline heart. A cry tore from his throat as he dropped his precious cargo and rushed toward the water. "Clíona!" he screamed, but it was too late. The wave crashed against the ancient standing stones, and when the water receded, no one lay upon the shore. Only the small shell pendant remained, pulsing with a faint, sorrowful light among the wet stones. Kievan fell to his knees, gathering the pendant in trembling hands, his tears mingling with the sea spray on his face as he whispered, "What have they done to you?" The silence that followed was not empty, but filled with the profound ache of loss, a tragic culmination of love's boldest choice. That night, a new sound joined the familiar music of the waves at Glandore Harbour. Those who lived along the shore described it as a woman's voice, sometimes singing a haunting melody, sometimes crying, carried on the water itself. And when they looked out to sea, some claimed to see a female figure formed of moonlit water, standing briefly among the waves before dissolving back into foam. On the third night, the three magical birds, no longer bound to the underwater court, came to Kievan. The white one settled on his shoulder and sang a song of explanation into his ear. "She is not gone," the birds sang, "but neither is she as she was. They have bound her to the sea itself. Her consciousness, her love, her very self remains, but spread thin across the waters of her domain." Kievan's sorrow was tempered by this knowledge. Though they could never be together as they had planned, neither were they truly separated. And so began a relationship unlike any known in Ireland before or since, a love story written in tides and music, in waves that reached for the shore and melodies that traveled across the water. Each evening, Kievan would return to the hidden cove to play his harp, pouring all his grief and love into the melodies. And on certain nights, when the conditions were right, Clíona, the Lady of the Waves, would gather herself into a semblance of form from the seafoam and moonlight to dance for him. Their love, a rhythm between land and sea. As the seasons turned and years passed, they finally began to take their toll on the mortal Harper. When old age at last began to silver Kievan's dark curls, he knew his time had come to an end. It was then that he asked to be carried to the hidden cove one final time. Propped against one of the ancient standing stones, with his harp in his lap, he played a farewell melody as the sun sank toward the horizon. It was a song of all the moments they had shared, a tender lament and a joyous celebration of a love that had defied all boundaries. The village witnesses swore that the sea itself behaved strangely that evening, rising much higher than the tide should have allowed, yet never quite breaking on the shore, as if held back by an immense will. As the final notes faded from Kievan's hands, a wave unlike any other rose from the deep. Within its crystalline heart, Cleona's form appeared, more solid and luminous than it had in decades. Her face a mixture of both sorrow and radiant joy. The wave rushed forward, not with destructive force, but with a gentle, purposeful embrace, enveloping the old Harper in a liquid light. As the waters receded, Kievan's body remained peaceful and at final rest. Those present swore that something more than life had left him. Some essential part of his spirit had been gathered into the retreating wave. His harp, still clutched in lifeless hands, played a single, perfect note, though no living finger had touched its strings. To this day, the fishermen of Glandore speak of two presences guarding their harbor: the Lady of the Waves, who calms the waters in dangerous storms, and the Harper, whose music sometimes plays when fog shrouds the coast, guiding lonely boats safely to the shore. On certain nights, when the moon is full and the tide is at its highest, those with fairy blood in their veins might glimpse two figures dancing upon the waters. A woman formed of moonlit seafoam, and a man formed of mist and music. Their love, a testament to a bond stronger than magic, deeper than the sea, and more enduring than either immortal life or mortal death. And if you ever stand at the hidden cove at precisely the right moment between the last light of day and the first star of evening, you might just hear the mingled music of harp strings and ocean waves, weaving together in a melody that speaks of a love that will echo through eternity.